Welcome back. So today we're just gonna do some database stuff. And like I mentioned earlier, the database that we're gonna be using is Postgres. This is gonna be the link to download, and there should be documentation for installing. Um, but I know that databases in particular are somewhat of a hassle to install. So specifically, if you're using Mac, you could install a Postgres app here, and then initialize, and then make sure you add the path variable to your bash profile. So then you could use psql in the command line. And then, of course, the ORM that we're going to be using is typeorm here. Um, so for typeorm, you need to create a ormconfig .json file with the first thing being the type of database. So as a reference, you don't have to use Postgres. You could use any other SQL database like MySQL or I'm not sure what else is available. The data mapper. There's also support for Mongo, but I would definitely say don't use Mongo for this, just because we're gonna do stuff that's SQL specific, which will use different decorators and such. So yeah. So I've already created an orm config here. Type is the database name. Host is where you're located. So we're gonna be using localhost. And if you're really hackery, you could just do 127.0.0.1.1, but let's just keep it as localhost for now. And Postgres default port is 5432. It's really easy to remember. And I'm gonna be using it's gonna be under the database user of Postgres with no password. And the database we're gonna be using is Groceries. So synchronize and logging is mainly for debugging purposes. And entities is where your data models will live. And you you should remember that what was this called? Source entities. So in the source directory is where our TypeScript files will live. So during development, um, ormconfig will look here. But when it's compiled, it's going to look into the dist folder where the compiled JavaScript is going to live. So that is why we're including both things here. And the star star is going into all of the folders, and star is anything. Okay. And then I've also added a nodemon.json file just to clean up our start script. So here we're specifying that we're going to watch any file inside of the source directory, as well as the .env file that we currently don't have yet. So let's make that env. So any changes to either of these will trigger nodemon to restart our server. The extension that is TypeScript, and then the execution command is going to be tsnode, because node only runs JavaScript, and tsnode will run TypeScript for us. And of course, this is our entry file. And let's make sure I change up the start script accordingly. So it's just going to be nodemon. Clean that up a little bit. All right. So first we need to create our database. So let's just I don't think I have anything private, so I think I should show you. So these are all the databases that we have currently. And if you remember, I I specified that our database name is going to be Groceries, and it's not here yet. So we're just going to make that really quick. So PSQL is the command to get into your Postgres shell. And then let's specify dash uppercase U for user. And the user is going to be Postgres. And I'm just going to do a create database groceries. Okay. And then we can connect to that database with little c groceries. And you're inside the groceries database. And with the Postgres app, you can see that it's here. And dash Q to quit, because we don't need to be in the shell right now. Okay, so now all we need to do is make sure our app connects to our database. I'm gonna specify the port here, just so that we can use it later. And what port am I using? 8080? Okay, we're just gonna do port. Actually, just process.env.ports, process.env.port, and that will give us this file. So 8080 is our environment variable. Let's close some things away. And then we also need to include yarn add.env, so then we could actually read the environment variables. So there we go. And at the very top of our entry file, which is actually here, we'll just import .env. And if you remember doing environment variables in Node, it will look something like this. So require .env.config. But there's a little trick that you can do, and just do this. So import .env/config, and it'll run the same code. And so if we do a yarn start dev, it will still point us to 8080. And just to prove that it's coming from the environment variable, I'm going to edit this to 3000. Save, and it changed to 3000. There you go. Yeah, 3000 is fine, I guess. Alright, okay, so let's exit this really quick. And what do we need? So we're gonna need a couple things. First, we need typeorm, of course, which is the thing we're using. We also need to include reflect metadata, and that's just a package that allows us to use decorators effectively. And then let's see, we need the Postgres driver, so then Node understands how to use Postgres, even though typeorm is there to kind of translate things for us. I believe that is all. So yeah, let's install that. Oh right, I forgot to do a yarn add, and that should update our package JSON, inner dependencies, so all of these basically. And let's see, do I need any types for these? These are all pretty TypeScript specific, with the exclusion of Postgres. But we're not going to go into Postgres directly, so I don't think we need the types. So yeah, we can leave that for now. Clear. And let's go back to our orm config. And you'll notice that we need an entities folder. And that's where all of our data models will live. So let's create that, which is a make directory source entities. Make sure I spell that right. Boop. Okay. And then finally, we need to establish a connection. So touch source, and I'm gonna make it in the root of our source code. So just do a database.ts here, and we're gonna follow the same project structure as that we started with server. So our entry point is gonna pull in both the database connection as well as the server connection, and just run both of them. So database is gonna look like import from typeorm, and let me see if I can remember this without. No, I don't. All right, export const db connect is what I'm gonna call it. Does it have to be async? I think it might. So we're just gonna do a await create connection, and by default it will grab all of the configuration that we have in our orm config, so we don't have to add anything. If we did want to add stuff, you could just put the entire object in here, but we don't need to at the moment, so that should work. So let's logging is true, so we should be able to see something when we start. So yarn start dev server. Oh right, we have to make sure we include it. So let's do a db connect here. Restarting. There we go. So these logs are coming from typeorm. These are our logs. And cool. So let's start making some entities. Now, actually, I'm just going to do this. Clear. Yeah. So, what is this app again? We're making groceries, right? So grocery list. Let's actually, yeah, that's fine. Grocery list.ts. So how do I want to structure this data? So at the top level, we're gonna have all of the available grocery lists, and then related to that, it's gonna have each grocery list is gonna have a list of items. So I think I'm gonna call it grocery list and item list. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. All right, so so the way typeorm works is basically it's class based, so it's object oriented. So and then we're in TypeScript, so we could just add the export over there. And grocery list. We're gonna import a couple things from typeorm. So we're gonna put it here, so we could do tab completion and just fill in the blanks. And it's gonna extend, so inheriting everything from the base entity. And base entity is what typeorm gives us, so it'll give us all the functionality. So stuff like CRUD functionality, so create, read, update, delete, is going to be attached to this grocery list entity. And it's going to be an entity, so we're going to use the decorator here. Well, not that one. let's get rid of that. So entity, and I'm actually going to give it the groceries. All right, I'll explain that in a bit. So unhandled promise rejection, missing, and primary does not have a primary. Oh yeah, that's because. All right, let's fill out the stuff. So let's make sure we have a primary key, primary, and we do a generated column here. So ID is going to be a string, and we're just going to use, let's do UUID. And then grocery list also wants to have I guess the name property. And then it also would want items, which is going to be an array of item list. Actually, let's just do item. We're going to rename this. Okay. Item doesn't exist yet because we need to import it here. We can get rid of that for now. Let's just focus on this. So this is going to be just a column. The type is going to be text. Yeah, I think that's good. I also want it to be unique, so true. And type unique. Should we have a default value? No. Oh, speaking of default values, we should probably have a date. So at create date column is just going to be created string, and type is going to be timestamp, and I think it'll automatically default to now, so that's good. Alright, so just to go over stuff, this syntax is what's called a decorator. In other languages, I believe Java calls it an annotation. So it kind of describes what it basically, it wraps the class or function, and it describes it to do a certain thing. So entity is gonna tell TypeScript that this is an entity, and it should have all the functionality of an entity. Whereas this property ID is the TypeScript type of string, but it is the Postgres type of a UUID. And then I kind of glossed over this, but in entities, it takes in a parameter of the table name that you're going to create. And then in name, we're giving it an option object to give the Postgres type of text and the unique constraint to be true. And on this side, this is the TypeScript type. So name is going to be a string in our program. And the same as the created date, it's going to be a type string in TypeScript, but it's going to be a timestamp in the database. Okay. And if we save, I have Prettier installed, so it auto formats. And so with doing all of that, Typeform will automatically migrate our database to make sure it matches this. So if we go into the groceries table, so -u Postgres, and make sure we connect to the right database, so groceries. And let's describe all of the tables. There's a groceries table now, which we didn't create manually. It was created for us with our ORM. And then if we describe the table, groceries, there's all the stuff that we created. So there's the ID, the UID. There's the name, which is type text. And there's the created date, which is a timestamp, and it defaults to now. Primary key is the ID, and the unique constraint is true, I believe. I think that's how you read it. I don't remember off the top of my head. Okay. Yep. Now let's make the item. It's gonna look pretty similar. So from Typeform, and this is also gonna be an entity with the table name of items. Did I make this plural? Yes. Alright, items, and of course export class item extends base entity, and of course we need an ID property string. We also need a name property here, right? So every item is going to have an ID and a name, and probably have a created date. It's going to be pretty important too. So this is what TypeScript sees. It's just an object with ID, name, and created. And then our database is going to have certain stuff. So this is primary generated column with a type of UID. This is also going to be a primary, no, not primary, just a column. And type here is also going to be text. Doesn't actually have to be unique, so I think that's good. And generated date, no, that's not it. Date. Create date column, there we go. Also going to be type timestamp. Okay. Now, the biggest pain point for me when using a SQL database is how it handles relations. But Typeform actually makes it really easy. So we're just gonna do a simple one-to-many relation. So each grocery list could have many items. And if I remember how that works, it should look like let's see. The the field name is going to be items, and it's going to be an array of items. An item we're importing from from the same directory from the item file. All right. So that part is easy enough. Now, to tell our database that there's a one-to-many relationship here, we need more annotations or decorators. And this is going to be, let's see, it's going to be a join column. And it's also going to be wrapped with a many to one, which takes in the type of item, and cascade is going to be true. Alright, so there's a bunch of alter tables, and then let's see what it looks like in our database. So Let me just clear this. Not really clear, but yeah. So describe all tables. We have groceries and items. Describe, I think D plus gives us better information. So let me just expand this. There we go. So column ID, type UUID. So yeah, this is what our items look like. It looks pretty simple. There's a foreign key, which is interesting. And that's because D plus groceries has a foreign key to reference our other table. All right, now we're not going to get too deep into relationships because this is a pretty simple application. We just have a list of lists. But you can't get much more complicated than this. But for now, this is good enough. And with all of that, to quickly to go over what we just did, we created two entities. So grocery list object and an item object using classes. And we connected to our database. And then our entry file is connecting to the database and the server at the same time. Okay, so quite a bit to go over, but everything is working fine. And next, we will create our routes and endpoints for the API. So I will see you next time. So let's just do a git status, add everything, git commits, connected to Postgres database, and then git push origin master. Clear? Okay, I'll see you guys next time.